Mary, ready to? Okay. Again, thank you for the panel and thank you the tech team. And I wish more of the tech team were here because of all their hard work and dedication these past months. And I've just really enjoyed driveway and McDonald's parking lot conversations as we were passing on equipment because I think that kind of sharing of ideas really made a difference. Um, I want to make just a very quick comment. I did try using AI, Jim, to plot some old silt data and overlap it onto or overlay it onto a map of Loch Lomond. And it took probably about 45 minutes and it still kept using Loch Lomond in Scotland, despite my best efforts. So,
Oh, no.
uh,
I still recommend AI. I
oh
still
yeah,
recommend
I finally got it to work, but it was a tough one.
it.
Um, I know this is going to be news to all of you, but lakes are very complex, open systems, and simplifying them into a few parameters and graphs or one-size-fits-all descriptors just does not recognize the complexity or the differences. However, to that end, the two areas of my focus have really been on interpreting and visualizing our data. And as a novice to lake ecology, I needed to learn an awful lot about the many parameters, had to discover how to really interpret them and to figure out ways to present the data. Meanwhile, I was giving multiple people headaches and heartburn while they were trying to digest the information that I was sending out in emails, Word documents, Excel charts. So sorry about that. Okay, let's go to the first slide on Seiki. So for most slides, you'll notice that what I included on the left-hand side, and this is more of a teacher thing in me, I wanted to put in some things, what people should know, and also what they should be looking for on the left-hand side. So for example, on this particular slide, I have definitions, I have Lake County median, numerical values of what to look for, usually tied to trophic state index. I did this because it was really difficult to keep all of these in my head and to know why things are happening. So I hope, maybe not the panel, but I hope other people may find it helpful. In the upper right-hand corner is an image of Loch Lomond, a shallow 70-year-old impoundment lake, 75 acres in size, with that yellow arrow pointing to a little yellow dot at our deepest point in South Bay. So we do have something called North Bay, South Bay, and on the far east side would be what we call the dam. In the upper right, oh, oops, I'm sorry, just said that. Seiki values of less than 20 inches are the red dashed line. And you'll notice that my Seiki values go from 0 up at the top and then go into the depth of the lake. So the ones that went above the red dashed line in July and August tended towards the hypereutrophic, but much of the time the Seiki values were in the eutrophic range. And then you'll notice that in the yellowish line, the Seiki measures that were less than 36 inches probably suggest high nutrient values. And I think, Holly, you already mentioned that that's true of most of our lakes. Next slide, please. In this one, one of these is a recently acquired Lake County heat map that we just had at our Lake Committee meeting. And over the past 10 years, these multiple images really show more aquatic plants are growing, especially since 2024 when we stopped spraying every few weeks. Now we only spray once in early spring, and then we use a harvester to cut off the 1 foot below, especially in our North Bay. But we also noticed, so if you look up the heat chart on the upper right, in the spring, our Seiki depths in North Bay and in the dam area were where there was more aquatic plants growing. We actually had a little increased depth, and that was not typical of some of our historical 25-year data. So we were kind of jumping up and down on the boat at that one. And then the water temperature, oh, next one, water temperature profile. Thank you. In this profile, I don't think it's going to really reveal very much, except that over the course of the year, it just confirms what the Lake County Health Department has been telling us probably for a very long time. We're a polymictic lake with a lot of mixing, limited stratification because we are so shallow. Next slide. The next three slides all kind of go together. So I'm going to talk about oxidation reduction potential, dissolved oxygen, and phosphate as a connected concept. In the ORP, healthy lakes typically have ORP values well over 300 millivolts in the hypolimnium, and this produces a very strong oxidizing environment, and that's really good for dissolved oxygen. However, Loch Lomond, our ORP values, our profile values were always below 200 millivolts, which is a poor oxidizing environment. So decomposing plants and animal materials in this low oxygen condition consumes our dissolved oxygen and produces more reducing agents, leading to negative ORP and low DO. So this entire heat map should really be shaded red, but I use blue for higher values and white for the median and the red for the lowest, just to give it a little bit of color. But, and you will notice that only one of my value, well, actually, I'm going to show you another thing in a second. Just a side comment, St. Mary's Lake, which is only a few thousand feet east of where I'm at right now, and because I also did that lake, and it's a 15-foot deep lake, had very similar ORP values. Next slide, please. Dissolved oxygen, high DO means more oxygen gas is dissolved in water. High summer temps release that oxygen dissolved in lake water. In a similar way that when you just start heating a boiling pot of water, at the very, very bottom, before you start boiling, the very bottom, when it just starts to heat up, you'll start to see some very small bubbles at the bottom of the pot, and that's probably the dissolved oxygen that's just starting to go out. Later on, when you get the full rolling boil, that's vapor pressure of water vapor. So our profile values were primarily greater than 5 milligrams per liter, but in September, some of the values went below 5 milligrams per liter, and that's the red shaded areas. That is very stressful for fish, and below 2 milligrams was deadly for fish. And at St. Mary's, where I did do a greater depth measurement, because I did at about 11 feet below the surface, the values were almost always below 5 milligrams throughout the entire year. So even lakes in close proximity are not always alike in terms of their behavior. Next slide, please. So our phosphate numbers, nothing overly serious at the 3-foot depth. And that's really all I did because our deepest point was only about 7.5 feet there. But in September, there were some phosphate readings that were above the 0.07 eutrophic, possibly being some phosphate possibly being released from the sediment. And I'm curious now after hearing one of, I think it was, I can't remember now if it was Holly or Alana who said that measurements at just above the sediment is where we may be getting those values. And we weren't measuring things all the way down next to the sediment. I'm curious now how we could do that. I did not do enough inlet or outlet readings on Loch Lomond. Doing more upstream sites would also have been interesting too.
Yeah, one quick point of information, Gerry. Once you translate the phosphate numbers back into phosphorus per se, what you find is that the testing is significant down to 10, about 15 parts per billion. So it is perfectly acceptable in terms of most of the monitoring we do. So it gets down to that low value.
And I will,
And grading it with phosphorus as opposed to phosphate is just.
okay.
Sorry, Jim, you cut out there a little bit. What was that last sentence you said?
Evaluating the numbers as phosphorus as opposed to phosphate is easier to do because you can compare it against numbers that are generated in things like ecoregion analysis and lake the
Yep.
National Lake Assessment and other sorts of places where there are data for lakes. It just becomes easier to evaluate.
Agreed.
And later on in the trophic state, I did do some chemical gymnastics to get it to be phosphorus readings. For comparison, at St. Mary's, the phosphate readings at 3 feet were pretty similar, but at I'm sorry, but at 11 feet, that's where they were almost always between 0.3 to 0.55 milligrams per liter. I want to quickly apologize to everyone for the 0.04s because our readings only went to 0.05, and then we would get these values of less than 0.05 milligrams per liter. So in order to display some of the measurements, I made those less than 0.05s to equal 0.04. I did it as a visualization method. But if somebody wants to give me $5,000 to $10,000 for a really nice spectrophotometer that reads down to the 0.01, I will gladly use it.
Gerry,
Next slide,
just letting
please.
you know we're at 12 minutes.
Chlorophyll, the next few slides will be quick. Chlorophyll, there was really, it was at the low end of eutrophic and some mesotrophic. Phycocyanin, next slide. No real concerns here. Nothing jumps out. All values were in the normal range. pH is the next slide. In this one, values were at the 3 feet below the surface, and there was I had overlapping scales of eutrophic 7.5 to 8.5 and mesotrophic 6.5 to 8, and it seemed to be pretty much in those regions. Next slide. This is the one that is total dissolved solids. This again confirms everything we saw in the Lake County reports that we've seen before. It looks more ominous with all values greater than 400 milligrams per liter above that red dashed line, indicating that it was both hypereutrophic and polluted. And possible sources, if it's coming from either the algae or from clay, so there could be both biological and geological components to this, as well as road salt. Next slide. Okay, trophic state index. So this clearly measures biological productivity and is used a variety of parameters, but the TSI-SAKI is the most well-established measure. And in this 100-point scale, Loch Lomond was usually eutrophic in the yellow region in that first column of the color chart, and borderline hypereutrophic. So it just went over that 70 mark in the heat of July, August, and September. Even though I included the equations and calculations for TSI, chlorophyll A, and phosphorus, I know that there's some questions about those. The chlorophyll could be misleading. It's a very small quantity being measured in the millions of a gram, and suspended sediments and non-algal sources could also alter the results there. And our phosphorus is not total phosphorus. It's soluble reactive phosphorus. So the values probably would be higher if we had a way to convert SRP phosphate into total phosphorus. I did use the SRP phosphate multiplied it by 0.327 to give a phosphorus value. So not exactly fudging the data, but I did do the chemical gymnastics to make some of this work. Next slide, please. So I've got two different kinds of summaries that you probably saw already. I'm, again, trying to find ways of presenting things both, not that you're not my audience here, but you're not necessarily my only audience. So I'm thinking also for our lake committee and trying to display information that would be useful for them. The observations of each parameter are color-coded based on the trophic state, and I tried to use multiple check marks if there was a predominance of one over the other. On the right-hand side were just the overall averages from May to October. Next slide. So in summary, we're mostly eutrophic, occasionally hypereutrophic when we're using Sankey, pH, chlorophyll values. And with respect to total dissolved solids, we're hypereutrophic and polluted. And there are occasional conditions for phosphate release, or we think phosphate release, with low dissolved oxygen and low ORP and the phosphate tests. And looking at the four images at the bottom that I stole from somewhere that I really like them, Loch Lomond is biologically productive, and we're just a better place for plants and fish than for swimming and boating. Although we're trying as a lake committee to look for functional balance among environmentally appropriate strategies, improving aesthetics, and supporting recreational uses. And that is a lot easier to say and write than to accomplish. Next slide. So these are the additional observations from our committee. And we did have our end of the year meeting last week. So these all correspond to some of our lake management plans. So weed harvesting really increased significantly from last year, primarily because we created a second site where they could offload all of the weeds. And it has been very effective. And the geese deterrents, we've really been using a number of things like lights and buffer strips and more fencing, but we still need to do more buffers and fencing. But there's been a reduction for the past 3 years. E. coli, fewer beach closings than years prior to 2024. Algal blooms, we only had one this year around Labor Day. Biodredging seems to be working, but we don't have clear numbers. But we still have silt in one of our southwest inlets. And that's something that we'd like to work on. And then the thought of using more circulators has been suggested. If we could jump past the questions for a second. Okay, these quick slides, just to point them out, this was my information about the monitoring project, and I do have a QR code if you actually want to access all the data. Next slide. And this was just all the facts about Loch Lomond if you were interested or needed that information. Next slide. This is the lake management plan, and there's a lot in this. And I highlighted the blue things that I had actually been doing. But when you really come to think about it, the things that I was doing had more to do with monitoring and not necessarily the actions. But hopefully it gives us information about our actions if they're working, or what actions we should look at in the future. And the last is, next slide. Yeah, the Lake County Health Department recommendations from 2015. We do read your reports and we do listen to what you say, but it really does take us a lot of time and money that we just don't have to follow through on all the recommendations. But they are vital to the health of the lake, so we really do appreciate them. And if we could go back to the softball questions that I have, I don't think these are going to take a long time for you to answer. After listening to Paul's questions, I think mine are softballs. So what recommendations do you have for silt buildup? And I think you kind of answered some of those. We'd have to go all the way down pretty low. And we still don't know the makeup of the silt, so it'd be good for us to get some kind of a test on that.
Uh,
Go ahead, go ahead.
I have three suggestions. First of all, there's a brand new report prepared by SMC giving you a number of suggestions in terms of taking care of the watershed and nutrient delivery to the lake. Secondly, Alana owes you a new report next year, as near as I can tell. Third, an assessment of the blue-green algae in terms of screening test is I've recommended for all of the different lakes to do a much more frequent test on a weekly basis. The test itself is very sensitive, but it is very worthwhile because it's difficult to know when and where you may have toxic blue-green algae. So those are the three recommendations.
And just to add, so yeah, actually will be out next year doing Loch Lomond as our water quality report. So we will be doing that along with St. Mary's Butler in the watershed. And then Loch Lomond, we do take algae samples every 2 weeks at the beach for microcystin and cylindrospermopsin, regardless of a bloom present or not. And we didn't see any values above the recreational threshold this year.
Alana, what test do you use for screening the beach?
We send it to Illinois EPA and they're analyzing it in the lab.
All of them. In other words, it's not a screening test, it's a full-blown test.
Yeah.
That's outstanding. Good.
Thank you.
We have 3 minutes left. Any comments, Holly?
Well, one of my questions was indeed, so the chlorophyll, that's micrograms per liter, that data is generally below 12 and even lower below 8. Is that true? I'm just kind of surprised in some way that's that low. And this is with the sonde is measuring this. Is that right?
Correct. And I think for all the other values, they were at the 3-foot depth, but I think chlorophyll was the measurement at 5 feet.
At
I think
5
that's what I
feet.
saw. Yeah, I think that was what I saw on the, but I could get you the profile. Well, the profile data was there.
Okay.
But yes, that's correct. And I've got it for all 3 sites so I do 3 sites at Loch Lomond, and I've got the data for St. Mary's as well.
Because I saw then one of the dissolved oxygen profiles, there was some super saturation, like 12 milligrams per liter. And so I just wondered if there was an algal bloom on that date.
No, actually, if you there at the very bottom, it will say the time of day. So
Yeah,
most
so
of the time I was doing Loch Lomond in the morning and St. Mary's in the afternoon. But that one that hit 12 was the 1 p.m. I was doing
Right.
Loch Lomond at 1 p.m.
So more algal productivity can super saturate
Right.
oxygen. So just an interesting, wondered comparing that, if there was a chlorophyll measurement at that very time. And is that 2nd of August? Yeah, see, so you see the chlorophyll numbers were up on the 2nd of August. So just some of those interesting, cause and effect relationships. But still overall, it's maybe lower chlorophyll numbers than I expected, but that's good generally. But still, like you say, you're generally a eutrophic, tend to be a eutrophic lake. Again, not surprising. What is this is for both, so Paul answered it with Countryside having it, there is indeed a hard clay bottom under Countryside. Do you know what your sediment situation there is at Loch Lomond?
I don't know exactly, but when I was looking at a geological map of Lake County, zooming in on it, it just suggested that it was clay, but I don't know definitively.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you. Oh, is there another comment?
Yeah, can I just add one thing? I just want to say I did really like your visualizations, how you kind of did the graph in like a heat map, like with the Excel data, where you had the red and the green shading. I thought that was really nice visually. So just wanted to tell you that.
Well,
Agreed.
and you could thank Jim for that because I think I'm the one that gave him heartburn about the about the graphs.
And then just with the TSIP trophic state, I would just be careful about doing that with the SRP. Can't really
I really encourage that we follow Lake County Health Department methods for that now and in the future, so that all the data that is taken can match up with the types of values that they have had. I think TSI is a great measurement, but it has to be taken with consistency.
So is there a way for us to do TP, test for TP?
And the answer to that is actually yes. There is a way to do it, but you would be using different equipment. You'd be using Hawk equipment, which is capable of doing total P as well as SRP.
Okay. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry if we've gone over.
But again, next
And
summer,
think,
Alana's gonna, Lake County Health Department folks are gonna be out there, so you're gonna get that
mhm,
TP data, at least, is that monthly? Or
monthly. Yep.
6 months or 5 or
5.
5 months?
and the values, the target values are unusual, Holly. When you take a look at the National Lake data, they go from something like from 7 to 30 is eutrophic.
Yeah, that's quite a range.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a little bit unusual.
Okay, team, I hate to cut us off, but we are